is to make it short for people. And Isha, the Prophet ﷺ would actually recite in Isha Wattin wa Zaytun more than many other chapters in the Quran. Some of the companions, they would say, we would hear the Prophet ﷺ reciting Wattin wa Zaytun a lot in Isha. So the point here, the way that we understand this whole practice is by combining the different practices. And the scholars in Islam, they say, if you are praying by yourself, then there's nothing wrong as long as you don't go into excess. If you recite whatever is easy for you, you recite a long portion of the Quran, a long surah, and so on, because you're praying by yourself. But once you are leading other people, whether it is here at the masjid or you're leading your family at home, whatever case it might be, as long as you're leading someone other than yourself, your wife, your children, and so on, then it is important that you take people's needs into consideration. You might be young, you might have energy, you might have memorized a good portion of the Quran, but the salah is not supposed to be difficult for people. So you should actually make it as easy as possible without compromising that salah. So you read, even if you read Alam Tara Kayfa Fa'ala Rabbuka bi Ashabil Fil and chapters like it, short and simple chapters, you have completed your salah, and inshallah you will receive that reward. Sometimes you get, especially this used to happen with, and still happens with students, when you start learning the Quran, either you've learned a good portion and you want to practice, and as soon as you get the chance of leading the salah, you want to show people, mashallah, how much Quran you have memorized, or you want to show your beautiful voice, but it is not the time to be practicing or to review your Quran whilst you're leading other people. You leave that to your own time, and the best time to review Quran, it is actually in tahajjud, in the night prayer. If you pray by yourself, you can review a good portion of the Quran in the Qiyamul Layl. So, moving on, one point that the Shaykh mentions is, if you are praying your salah, and we know just from basic knowledge that Fajr is the salah that we recite out loud, is from amongst the salawat al-jahriya, meaning that we recite with a loud voice so we can hear ourselves and other people can hear us. Okay? Dhuhr, you recite with a low voice, and our point to make here is, it does not mean that you recite. People sometimes in Dhuhr and Asr, they will recite without even moving their lips. Okay? This is not from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, meaning that they think that reciting in a low voice means that you recite with your heart. So they might be standing there, not moving their lips, and they will recite with their heart, with their mind. This is not the way to recite. You should actually be moving your lips and your tongue, and you should make it in a way that it is with a soft voice, so people around you can't really hear every single thing that you're reciting. What is the proof for this? The proof is that the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they would actually tell us in certain narrations that the Prophet ﷺ in Salatul Dhuhr and Asr, what he would recite. And if the Prophet ﷺ did not move his lips, his mouth, then we would not know what he recited. But the companions were able to distinguish a few verses, and by that they know what the Prophet ﷺ was reciting. And even there is more evidence than that. There's specific narrations that mentions that they could see that the Prophet ﷺ was reciting something in his salah, and not just standing there, because they would see his lihya, his beard moving. So they were standing behind the Prophet ﷺ, and even though they can't distinguish everything that the Prophet ﷺ is saying, they would be able to understand that he's reciting something, because his mouth is moving, and because of the mouth moving, the beard moves as well. So the Fajr, it is a loud salah that you recite out loud. Dhuhr, it is a low, with a low voice. Same with Asr, and Maghrib, it is obviously with a loud voice, and then Isha with a loud voice. Now, just as a side point again, some people, they say, what is the hikmah? What is the wisdom? Why do you pray with a loud voice in Fajr, but then Dhuhr you recite with a low voice? Why not make it all loud, or make all of it silent and quiet? The scholars in Islam, they've come up with different reasons. Some people, they say that it is because in the early days, especially in Mecca, when the revelation was new, the early Muslims, they were afraid for their own safety. So at Fajr, when people would be asleep and they would not be able to hear or pay attention to who's reciting, they could recite out loud. But though when people usually are awake or working or doing some kind of labor, because of the worry that they would be seen. And then Asr, same, and Maghrib, because they would be out with their animals and grazing and being away, then they would be able to recite with a loud voice. And Isha being at night, you could recite with a loud voice. Ala kulli hal, there's nothing specific that we can use as evidence to say this is the reason. But it shows the way that we approach the religion. It shows the way that we approach the religion. How does it show that? What I mean by that is that the religion is all by revelation. Okay? We follow what the Prophet ﷺ taught us. Whether we understand the wisdom of it in the present, or we cannot understand the wisdom behind it. This is important, because some people, they'll ask for the wisdom behind it. If they understand the wisdom, then they say, okay, I'll do this. But if they cannot understand the wisdom, why on earth are you doing this? Then they say, no, I don't want to do this. But as Muslims, we say, سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. We hear and we obey, even if we don't understand the reason behind it. And there's a beautiful athar, or narration, about Ali radiallahu anhu, the famous companion. He said, if the religion, this is an important statement, he said, if the religion was only based upon the qiyas, or understanding, or putting two and two together, what is apparent, then it would make sense to make mash of the khuf, of the leather sock. Where would you make the mash? Would you make it on the top, or would you make it on the bottom of the sock? Which one? The bottom, if you use your intellect, right? Why? Because the bottom is where it gets dirty. You walk on it, and it gets dirty, so you would make it on the bottom of the leather sock of the hoof, right? But what happens is, we're taught in the Sunnah that the mask should be on top of the hoof, not on the bottom, okay? So again, why do we do this? We don't understand the wisdom in this case, but we do it because the Prophet ﷺ taught us this. So this relates to many parts of the religion. So these prayers, they're divided up in different ways. Some are loud prayers, some are not silent prayers, but you read with a lower voice. and then the point the Shaykh is making here is, let's say a person makes a mistake, and it happens to all of us. You make a mistake, you come to pray or to lead dhuhr, and instead of reciting with a low voice, you recite with a loud voice. Okay, so you start up, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, and people they hear you. Now, if a mistake is made in the salah, then the people behind you should correct you. Whether it is a mistake in the Quran that you're reciting, or it is a mistake in the actions that you make. As far as the Quran, if you make a mistake in the Quran, whoever knows the Quran behind you does not have to be a hafiz, but has to know that part of the Quran. They will correct you. And as far as the mistake in terms of the actions during the prayer, if it is known that a mistake has been made, then the people are supposed to correct you by saying Subhanallah. Some scholars, they say you can use any other term, but the majority, they say that you say Subhanallah, and by that it reminds the person that you have made a mistake in your prayer, and the person will try to correct that mistake. So if a person starts off the prayer, let's say Dhuhr Salah, and they start reciting out loud, once they're corrected, let's say someone says Subhanallah, and then they notice that they need to recite low, then they do not need to repeat what they recited. So just an example, we're praying Dhuhr, and the person starts Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, and then someone says Subhanallah, then the person just continues where they stop. They do not have to start over from Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen again. If they do, then that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that, but they do not have to. Similarly, let's say someone is praying Maghrib, and then they're quiet for a long time, and people notice that this person has forgot to recite loud, and they correct him and they say Subhanallah, and the person might be at Malik Yawmiddin, then they can continue for Malik Yawmiddin. And then they just carry on from there, so they be quiet, and they reach that part, and they correct it, so they say Malik Yawmiddin, and then carry on. Okay? So this is something that the scholars have talked about. Let's say another type of mistake happens, and this happens quite a lot. If a person forgets the amount of raka'at that they're praying, okay? This is perhaps the most common mistake that happens after the mistake of making a mistake in the Quran. A person is praying. They're praying Dhuhr, and they forget whether they prayed 4 or 3 rak'ahs. Okay. Now there's a qa'idah, a rule that the scholars in Islam they use, and it makes things very easy. They say that you always base things upon what you know, okay? What you're certain about. Everything goes back to what you're certain about. So, for example, let's say you're praying Dhuhr again, and you have a doubt. Is this my 3rd rak'ah, or is it my 4th rak'ah? Which rak'ah is it? So the scholars, they say, you base it upon what you're certain of. So if you're doubtful whether it is 3 or 4, what is the least amount that you're certain about? It will be that you've prayed 2, right? At least you prayed 2, otherwise you wouldn't have a doubt whether it is 3 or 4, right? So then you say, I have prayed 2, and then you base your calculation upon that. And this type of rule, it is not only applied for the salah, but is applied elsewhere as well. Let's say the person is doing tawaf around the Kaaba, okay? And the tawaf is 7, okay? 7 circles around the Kaaba. Now sometimes, if your mind is not really focused, you might forget what number you're at. Is this my 5th or 6th shot? Okay, the circle that you go. Now, what do? You base it upon what you're certain, and that would be, in this case, that you completed 4, and then you're doing your 5th. And again, this comes again and again. Same thing with wudu. Okay. It happens often that we come for salah and we think to ourselves, do I have wudu or do I not have wudu? So what do then? You base it upon what you're certain. You have 2 conditions. Either you broke your wudu or you made your wudu. Okay. So let's say you try and think back. You think back, I can remember making wudu. I remember being in the masjid, as an example. I was in the masjid and I made wudu. But I can't remember, did I break my wudu after that? Did I use the washroom? Did something happen? Because of that doubt, you base it upon what you're certain that you made wudu. And the opposite is true. Let's say you can remember when you used the washroom. You remember when you used the washroom, but afterwards you can't remember, did I make new wudu or not? So you disregard the doubtful. So in that case, you would say, I don't have wudu, I need to make wudu again. So this is a rule in Islam that makes things very easy, and it removes doubt, and you lean in the safe way that you remove any possible doubt. And let's say even if you didn't have wudu, then inshallah, making that wudu again, it is better. When it comes to Salatul Layl, the night prayer, the Shaykh here, he mentioned specifically that the scholars in Islam, they say when it comes to night prayer, you have an option. Okay? And this option depends on your surroundings. Okay? If you are leading people, then you should be reciting the Quran with a loud voice. We know that Sunnah prayer in general, it is recited with a low voice. When we pray the Sunnah after Maghrib or the Sunnah after Isha or before Fajr, we do not recite with a loud voice. But Salatul Layl, the scholars, they say it is a little bit different because you take into consideration the surroundings. So if you're leading people in Salatul Layl, which is a Sunnah prayer, then it is better for you to raise your voice. Similarly, if you're praying by yourself and there's no one around you, then you can raise your voice in Salatul Layl as well. But if there are people that are around you doing something else, then it is better for you to lower your voice. When it comes to the order of the verses, the ayat, the scholars in Islam, they say the Quran was revealed in order, okay? Meaning that the order that we have today, where Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, how they come after each other, this is actually part of the revelation. Even though, if you look into the history of the revelation of the Wahy, you will see that certain verses were revealed at certain times. So a few verses might have been revealed, and for the next few verses to be revealed, it would actually take sometimes months, if not years, for the next portion to be revealed. But even then, the Prophet ﷺ, he was taught to put it into sequence. And he actually taught the companions to put it into sequence. And the Prophet ﷺ would recite to Jibreel this sequence. And This is why the companions, they knew how to correct each other when they would make a mistake in reciting. So all that proves that the way that we have the Mus'haf today, the Quran, it is in order. And because of that, it is not permissible for someone to jump a verse or to recite a second verse before the first verse. So it is important that in the Salah, that the person who is reciting recites in order and recites with the proper tajweed. There are certain places in the Quran where the tajweed, it is so important that it actually, if you make a mistake, it changes the whole meaning. It changes the meaning completely. And by tajweed, people, they think it means to make your voice beautiful. Yes, that is a part of tajweed. But tajweed is much bigger than that. A part of tajweed is the makharij, the way that the letters come out. So if you do not pronounce the letters properly, you actually make a big change in the speech of Allah. There is one verse in the Quran that comes to mind where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. And the meaning of it, if you recite it correctly, it means that the only ones who have true fear of Allah, this khashiyah, are who? The ulama, the scholars, because they have the knowledge, right? But if you change the fatha on lafdul jalala, on the name of Allah, if you change it into al-dhamma, and you change the ulama, the dhamma there to a fatha, then it actually switches the places. And instead of reciting it properly, you say the only ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is afraid of are the ulama, which is shirk, right? So this is why it is very important that when we recite the Quran, that we recite it with its proper tajweed. And again, tajweed is not only the beautification of your voice, making it beautiful and reciting with a nice tune or something that sounds nice, but it is to pronounce everything proper and to actually stop where you're supposed to stop. So sometimes, if you don't stop where it's supposed to be a stop, it can actually alter the meaning as well. So, the Shaykh carries on and speaks about the ruku'. Okay? This is something that needs to be highlighted. Don't know how to make it right here. We stand up. When you pray the salah, I don't know if you can see, when you go into ruku', you should try your best to keep your back as straight as possible, whilst at the same time looking down at where you're supposed to be looking down. And your hands are supposed to be grabbing your kneecaps without leaning too much on the kneecaps. And you're supposed to hold it like that and try to straighten your back as much as possible. So you don't go too much down where it becomes a strange bend, and you're not supposed to stand too much up where your back is not straight, but you try your best. And obviously people, they can do this. Not everyone can do the exact same thing, but what we are told is we try our best. We try our best. If you have a back problem, if you have any other type of problem, then inshallah you do whatever you can. But at the very least, you should have that knowledge. You should have that knowledge. Even though you're not able to do it, you can pass that knowledge on to your children, to the next generation, to other people, so that perhaps they will be able to do it. And every time when you make a movement in your salah, it should be done in a very slow motion, okay? Not in a quick way where you go from one to the other quickly. You take your time, and even when you say the words that you're supposed to be saying, you're supposed to take a short break. So let's say you're in the ruku' and you say Subhana Rabbiyal Azim in your ruku', and when you come back, when you say the last one, you're actually supposed to take a break. You take a break, and then you say Sami'a Allahu liman hamida. Okay. When you say Sami'a Allahu liman hamida, it is for the person who is either Imam or praying the Munfarid that says Sami'a Allahu liman hamida, and then the Ma'mumeen, the people behind that person, they do not say Sami'a Allahu liman hamida, but they say Rabbana wa lakal hamd, and then they can say other dhikr that has been mentioned, Rabbana wa lakal hamd, hamdan tayyiban mubarakan fi, kama yuhibbu Rabbuna wa yarda, mil'u samawat, and so on. There's many different versions that can be said. And to conclude, because of the time, there is a specific nahi, prohibition when it comes to reciting Quran specifically in the sujood or in the ruku'. The ruku' is only for the dhikr that is supposed to be said. Same thing with the sujood. The sujood, you can make dua and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for other things, but you should not recite any Quran. Then sometimes it might happen, especially for those that might have memorized Quran, when they try to think of what to recite next or something like that, but you should refrain from reciting anything whilst you're in the sujood and even in the ruku'. And in the ruku' and the sujood, throughout the whole prayer, in Islam, there's no such thing as reciting just with your heart or your mind. Meaning that for something to be considered to be a recitation of qira'ah, you need to move your tongue, you need to move your lips. Okay? So this is the same when you're saying dhikr. If you're holding the mushaf, some people, they might just be sitting and they hold the mushaf and they read the mushaf as if they read a book, right? And they don't move their lips at all, and they just sit, and all that time they read with their mind. But like the scholars have said, this is not the way that the Prophet ﷺ and the companions would recite. It does not mean that you have to read with a loud voice or to make yourself tired. You read in a comfortable way, but you need to be reading, because if you don't read, then you might not get the amount of reward that you were anticipating. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Inshallah, with that we will conclude.